All right, good morning. We're going to call to order the meeting of the Franklin County Board of Commissioners with a joint meeting with the IBA. We note for the record that we have a quorum consisting of all 5 commissioners. So let y'all open your meeting and then we can do the pledge.
All right.
Invocation.
I'd like to call a meeting to order for the Franklin County IBA. If anybody has any conflict, please acknowledge at this time. If not, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn the meeting back over to you.
All right, thank you. We're going to have an invocation at this time, so if you'll stand and then remain standing, join us in the pledge. Lord, thank you for this opportunity for us to be able to meet this morning. Help us to make wise decisions as we plan for the future of Franklin County. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. So at this time, is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Make a motion to approve the meeting agenda, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Wester's made the motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Swales has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to approve the agenda, signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, same sign. The motion will carry 4-0 and the agenda is approved. We all good?
So we need to do the same thing, I guess. All right. I guess right now I'd like to ask for a motion to approve today's agenda. So moved. I have a motion from Harris. Can we get a second? Second. Second from Courtney. Any other discussion? All in favor, show your vote sign. Motion carried. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, at this time we'll turn it over to Tanya Powers and Derek Turner to handle the rest of the meeting.
All right, awesome. Good morning, everybody. So thank you, everybody, for their attendance today. And basically what we want to try to accomplish today is, we've had discussions in the past between IBA and the BOC of sort of where the county stands, what we're looking to do as far as our growth overall, how we want to manage that, what our expectations are of that. So today, really, we want to take time to make sure everybody's on the same page about those items. It is hard for us to, as a county, grow in a certain direction if we're veering off in different directions. So really the main purpose of this meeting is just to make sure that we all have an understanding of exactly where we are going as a county, how we're going to do that, and what our best options. And if we have any things that we need to talk through that process, it'll be a time today to really do that. So we're continuing to grow now, currently, and then as we have future growth, it's hard for us to not be on the same page in that realm, and then actually say that we're working together in that process. So anything you have to add?
Yeah, I think from the Development Authority's side of this, I think, as we continue to move forward, it's no secret that Franklin County is progressing and it's moving, quickly. And meetings like this are the foundation of how that growth continues to be handled. So I think this meeting is super important, and that we look at where the Industrial Authority is, where we've been, where we're going, and then we get that viewpoint from the Board of Commissioners, and just make sure that we're all moving forward. It makes the process so much quicker and so much easier. So excited. Thank y'all for coming this morning.
Awesome. With that being said, we'll jump right in. We are going to try to get ourselves out of here within, we said, about a 2-hour limit. So we're going to try to be out here about 11 o'clock. I know everybody has busy days. So we're going to try to stay to that as much as possible. If we need to schedule further meetings, then we always have to. We'll try to resolve as much as we can within today's meeting. So we're kind of going to start off with, I think one of the most important questions that we have is what the overall vision for the county is. We're looking at what the vision for the county is, and this will be just an opening up to both sides talking point of what we believe that to be, because I think that's kind of where it starts. This is what we believe the county to be. This sets our direction and our tone for the county, and then everything else trickles from that. Just like, for instance, in setting the budget for this year, direction to departments is, we want to be a high service quality organization. That sets the tone for how we make our budget, and everything from there flows at that point. So we want to open it up first thing. I guess we could start this one with the board commissioners. What do we believe to be our vision for the county? to anybody on the BOC though.
Commissioners, y'all want to start one at a time?
I'll start. I think, as we've been in the planning process over the years, especially planning and zoning, we've tried to figure out where different types of growth need to occur in the county. And we worked with Georgia Mountain, I don't know what that department is.
Regional Commission.
Yes. To kind of figure out where good growth areas are for commercial and industrial growth. And they helped us develop a characteristic map to update to kind of what we had in the past. And it indicated a couple areas along 85 as good areas for that type of growth. But I can only speak for myself, not for the other commissioners. I see that growth, industrial, that being the best place for that type of growth. I see the cities incorporating more residential growth. And possibly, that's a commercial light industry. And then I'd like to keep, the rural characteristics of Franklin County intact as well. So I think if we can, have specific heavy and medium industry in specific places, allow the cities to do what cities do, which encourage residential growth, we might be able to find a pretty good balance between agriculture and industry.
I think kind of tagging on to what Ryan said, I think that, at least from my standpoint, and the other commissioners can share this, I think our focus ought to be more on light and moderate industry, and then from the city and the county's perspective, the housing to go along with that. I think 85 is the ideal corridor for industry, unless we want to look at large industrial parks off of that corridor that are well developed, that are ready to accept larger industries, but they're well screened so that they have minimal impact on surrounding areas. Because we're always going to have that conflict when we plant a large industry somewhere in the county, what's next to it and how's that going to impact them. And if we have areas that we're investing in, that we're developing that are already ready to receive them, that have a heavy screen around them and are in the ideal location, maybe we can minimize those impacts. I think we ought to invest, we ought to work with IBA, the county, to bring utilities to that I-85 corridor where they're not there. The infrastructure, the gas, power, so that we're ready when that industry comes knocking and we have a place and we have the utilities that they need.
I guess the vision that I look at is just from talking to the majority of our citizens, they all want to keep the rural, small town charm that Franklin County is. And I agree with that. And many of them they're not opposed to growth and everything, which we know we got to have. And me personally, I would rather see more industry coming first than the housing developments, because I'd rather have something here that keeps those people in the county working instead of us becoming a veteran community to Banks County, Jackson County, Hart County, any of them. And so, my vision is I do want to see more industry coming in before a huge population growth, because we all know rooftops don't pay the taxes that industry pays. And that's a big concern. And, I also want to keep our schools system in mind, because of what could happen with it if we don't have the industry before the population boom. So that's what I'm looking at.
What I look at, I got a quote on the radio this morning, started yesterday, is the rural roads in Franklin County. And you can go back and look, and we haven't paved the road from the ground up. Lord, I can't remember how long it's been. So you're going to have industrial parks. They need to have good roads to get there, wherever they're at in the county. And so as a county, we need to work on that. The adjoining counties, we've got more dirt roads than any of them. I know it's a good sized county too, but we need to be paving some roads. And we need to figure out how to get money to do it. Me personally, I think we're dragging our feet pretty bad. It didn't happen overnight. It's been happening a long time. It's just gotten worse and worse over the years. And so you'll have subdivisions, and like Jason said, we need the utilities there. You can't put a water line in overnight or within a week. We got to do it over time, and because we don't have the employees to do it with. And so we got to look at stuff like that.
Someone else. I think we need to focus on balance of our agricultural and our industrial areas. Have to have a good balance for those, and I think we can focus on light industrial and our industrial parks along the I-85 corridor, and then make sure we have the right infrastructure for all that. Water, gas, sewer. I think is important in getting all that, and the high-speed internet will help too.
Yeah, I agree with him and with Commissioner Wester. We don't want to become a bedroom community on the one hand to the surrounding counties that are able to get the industry and they look to us to provide their housing. On the other hand, we don't want to become a dumping ground for toxic heavy industry. And I'm not saying we say, no, we're not going to accept any heavy industry, but I think our focus should be targeted to light and moderate because I think that has the best impact, has the least environmental impact or negative impact to citizens and potential to bring jobs, expand our tax base, all the benefits that come with that.
All right, and we'll come back to some of those points that are kind of made within that, but we'll toss it over here to the IBA for what you see as being the values or what you see the vision of the county being.
Well, all we can speak about is industrial because we're the industrial building authority.
Right.
And I heard several of you both mention strictly light industrial. Do you know how many great heavy industrial partners we have in this county right now? And they're in the city limits of Lamont.
Yeah, it depends on how you define it.
We got to be very
right.
careful of how we say we don't want heavy industrial because we would be slapping many of our great partners we already have in this county right now in the face if we say we don't want heavy industrial. I think we need to look at as a county having heavy industrial, but having it set where if there's certain things you don't want, put that in there. But if we go out and say we don't want heavy industrial, we're slapping the Texaco, for example. We're taking Sharp Solutions, slapping them in the face. We're taking Finello, carry-on trailers, Pharmatech. And that affects everybody. And, I want Tanya just to kind of touch on the effects of these companies, not only for Franklin County, but globally. Tanya, if you don't just mention that, or go ahead.
Let me expand on that. When we had the meeting where we had the experts come in, one of the things that they talked about was this could be a corridor for, the electric car industry. Well, that's heavy industry.
Right.
And so, again, I think it's easy to say we only want this, but you have to define that. It's not like we get to say, go out there and pick out of the cloud and say, hey, we want you, we want you, we want you. You get defined kind of about what's coming up your way. And so, I think that electric car battery industry is coming this way. I look at what they were talking about in the other county. What was it? It was not Newton, but
it was Morgan.
Morgan Newton. I mean, what's happened there? I mean, it's been huge. And so, and going back to what Commissioner Wester said, we have communities coming. You look at what's happening over in Livonia. We've got apartment complexes coming up over there. We've got subdivisions coming up over here. We have people coming. If we're not careful, we're going to turn into that. And so, we have to make sure we're all on the same page so that we're marching to the same beat and that we get the industry in here to support that, or else we're going to be in a mess. All our taxpayers are going to be supporting all this growth. You can't build roads. You can't put in infrastructure if you don't have industry to support that, and all you're going to do is put it on the backs of the citizens. So you got to be careful with that.
And with that, we've not had a single project come across our desk as the IBA in the last 12 months that has not been listed as heavy industrial. We've not had a single one that says light.
How do you define that? What definition?
The state defines that.
So what is the definition? I mean, do we have something we can refer to?
It could be, just because it's like what John said, the acid in the batteries or the lead in the batteries, that defines heavy commercial. Just like with carry-on trailers, what they're doing is defined as heavy commercial. Latexco, with the foam and the mattress, and everybody slept on a bed. And last night, Latexco made that bed or that foam with that bed. So I mean, all that, if it's petroleum based, all of that falls under things. You know, what I would recommend is you as a board taking a look at what the state defines certain criteria for heavy, light, and then mirror that. But if there's specific things that you don't want, put that in there. I think that would be great, because then you can go ahead and tell the state or different projects not to even worry about wasting their time in Franklin County, because they can go somewhere else. But that way we get the type of industry in here we as a group want.
Just to make sure, because I think it's important, and I think those points are so key, and I think we need to spend time really talking about that and hearing, what that looks like from the IBA standpoint and from the Board of Commissioners standpoint, because there's a mutual ground, and we got to find that, and that's key. I do think it's important that this board share what their vision is. I think it's important that just to kind of go back to that just really quick, because I think you're going to find some common ground in what the Board of Commissioners is speaking to and what the IBA is. I think another key point, when we look at what our mission is and our vision is, I think it's that we look at that top line of our creation and what that is. And that is to bring industry into the community, and that is to offset these taxes for citizens in the community. And so we have to make sure that our focus stays on our creation and how we're defined as the development authority, and then combine the interest of what that heavy and that light industrial looks like. If y'all can, I do want to hear, I think it's important that we hear what that vision looks like from our board's standpoint.
Well, I think from a practical matter, I know when we're talking about vision, we're talking about long term. But in the real world, you're not going to really have industrial development outside of cities, because you've got to have water, you've got to have sewer, you've got to have gas, and you've got to have internet. So it's great to say we've got an 85 corridor to see growth, but the practical side of that is we're 10 years away from, if we're proactive, we're 10 years away from getting the infrastructure along 85 to where you can actually have industrial growth. So right now, we're depending on the cities to provide the housing. We're depending on the cities to provide the industry. We're depending on the cities to provide the commercial properties. So the cities are doing all the heavy lifting, and that's okay. But what we need is a true partnership to where we can develop stuff out in the county. Livonia is projected to double its population by our estimates probably in the next 6 years or so because of the housing developments. Franklin County is at a point, Hart County is hurting for houses. Franklin County is at a point that in order to get the industry and in order to get the commercial development, we have to have those houses. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't like the increase in housing. Right now, I know the 2,500 people that live in Livonia, or 24, whatever it is. When you double that, you know how much harder that's going to make campaign season? That's going to...
I don't know, 700 people live in Carnesville.
Absolutely. It complicates the whole, complicates all of that, but unfortunately, it's a necessity. I think the county needs to be proactive with the housing simply because it's required in order for us to get the industrial growth. If we want better industries, if we want more reputable industries, then we've got to have the workforce for them. Right now, we don't have the workforce to build microchips. You know what we've got the workforce for? We've got the workforce for rock quarry and the other type of industries that are showing interest in coming. So we've got to have the housing. We need those people to move in and change the type of workforce if we want those types of industries. But let's be real at the same time. Franklin County is not a major player when it comes to industrial growth. So I would strongly encourage you to be very careful at the type of restrictions that you want to put on industries. We're not in a position to be able to pick and choose and say, it's not like we have this long list of industries that are knocking at our door wanting to come in. And so to preemptively say, okay, we don't want this type of industry, or we don't want that type of industry. The message that sends outside of Franklin County, and you can send the message inside, and people inside may understand what you mean, but the message that sends outside of Franklin County is we don't want industry. We don't want that type of growth. And I'm with everybody else about I want the small town feel, I want the rural feel, But the facts are, in the rural areas of Franklin County, it's not going to change. You're not going to get growth in those rural areas. You might get some housing developments, but you're not going to get industries because there again, you don't have the infrastructure there to be able to have the growth. So I would just caution the commissioners to be very careful about the restrictions that you want to place on industries coming in. You can always deal with those one-on-one, but when you start saying, and that's why the terminology matters, heavy industrial is a very broad term. If you're blocking out heavy industrial, I can make a case for almost every industry that's located in Livonia as to how it wouldn't fit, because every one of them, even perhaps the AutoZone distribution center, because of the type of stuff that they have and the trucks that are coming in, there's an argument to be made that that's heavy industrial. So I would just caution you to be very careful, because although you know what you mean when you say, we want limitations, outside of Franklin County, they don't understand that. And so when they hear you say, we don't want this certain type of industry, the message is, go somewhere other than Franklin County, we're not really interested.
That's a great point, Courtney, one that I've been sitting here thinking about. It's a mistake to define at the outset what we don't want. Courtney's exactly right. We don't have the luxury of saying, we don't want you, we'll take him, but we don't want you. We don't have that luxury, and we may never have it. So it is definitely a mistake. Now, I don't like paying property taxes. I'm sure very few people enjoy it. And the best way to keep residential property taxes down is with industrial property taxpayers. Whether you like the power plant, GRP, or not, they paid y'all $1 million in property taxes. For an average house, it takes about 800 homes to generate $1 million for you guys. That's not including the school system, that's for you guys. Think about that. 800 houses for one industry on a really small piece of property generates. Building our tax base through commercial and industrial is the only way to keep property taxes down, especially if we are having a lot of residential growth, which obviously we are. And we got an asset, more of it than any county from Atlanta to South Carolina, and it's I-85. Thank Governor Vanderbilt for I-85 coming through right through the middle of Franklin County. Brings hundreds of thousands of people every day, tremendous amount of exposure, and yet it's going to bring some industrial interest, and it already has, and it should continue to. So
well,
I think
I agree with you. I-85, we got 17 miles of I-85 going through Franklin County. Thank goodness for that. But on the other hand, I think we can be selective on some of the heavy industrial that comes in, like, the rendering plant that came up last year that was not accepted, thank goodness. And my back door, there's trying to be a rock quarry coming in. If the rock quarry comes, it's going to ruin the volume. There's no way around it. From the noise, the vibration, and 100 tractor trailer loads of gravel going out of that place every day down 59. I promise you the road won't last very long. So we can't be selective on some things. You look down to commerce, it's coming this way. We're primed for growth in this area. And I thank goodness this is the first time I can remember us having this kind of meeting. I'm thankful we're doing this, get our minds together so we can put forth an effort that we're consolidating and we're all agreeing on that we want growth in this area. And you're right, we've got to have this commercial and industrial growth to kind of alleviate some of those tax burdens on the residential. And thank goodness we're getting that comprehensive plan put in place to keep us in control of what kind of growth we have. Thank y'all for doing that.
Jerry, you missed my point a little bit. I'm not saying don't be selective. I'm not saying you can't be selective. I'm not saying, what I'm saying is, don't say it up front.
You cannot alienate a bunch of industry, whether you may accept them at the end of the day or not. But you should not say to them, no, don't even look here, because you don't know what you might do, and you don't know how they might react. And I just think it's a mistake.
Mr. Chair, may I make a quick statement? For those of you who don't know me, I'm Andrea Grant. I'm the attorney for the Industrial Authority. Welcome, and normally I don't say a whole lot, but one thing, tailgating on what they're talking about, is unfortunately I've been doing this for about 26 years, different real estate and industrial. And I'm not counseling you guys, because you guys got your own attorney, and consult with your own legal counsel. But there are some repercussions for totally prohibiting certain businesses and uses in a community. And I don't want to go through that because I don't want to tell people how to sue Franklin County or any city, but I think they're right that you just don't want to say, we're not going to do this, because it may have some effects that are negative on the county legally as being businesses.
And we haven't done that. We've actually revised our commercial industrial, and we took, before lots of industries were prohibited, but that doesn't hold up in court. So we have now been just very selective about, especially if we're talking about those really heavy industries, where they can be and what has to happen. So we have not said, to my knowledge, no, we're going to prohibit any use. We have just restricted what types of zoning districts it could be in. And I'll reiterate again, as I said a while ago, we're not saying no to heavy industry. But I think from our perspective, talking with the IBA as a group, our recruitment efforts, I think we would be more on the other end of the scale than on the heavy industry. I know that we can't control.
We don't recruit. We try to recruit, but everything we get is
right. A lot of things come, and we don't have any control over it.
Right.
But when we are actually out looking for, and there you do some recruitment.
Right.
I think that's incorrect to say.
Though, that we are not allowing any heavy.
Well, we're not saying that. We're just saying our focus. We want to look toward the lighter side.
So
it's a continuum. You could call, like you said, you could call anything heavy industry.
That's right.
If you look for it. So the definition is important. But if you look at it as continuing from light to heavy, we need to be focusing our resources more on this side than on this side.
Just ask a question. What you guys are requesting, or saying you'd like to see the vision for the county on light industry, would you guys have accepted the Carina plant?
The what?
You guys have accepted
Carina plant.
I don't know. I mean, I think that if you look at case by case, there's a lot. It depends on, what company it is, where it's going to go. I mean, there are a lot of factors to consider there.
I mean, that was Baltimore Park, I think $100 million. They had a $350 million investment initially. They're going to have $1 billion investment in there. And let me tell you, I think right through in that area, you can smell some of the stench from what they're cooking. And so the people who live in that area, it does have an impact on them. And they work hard, but they're providing hundreds and hundreds of jobs, good paying jobs, good benefits. But again, like I said, it's a $1 billion investment at the completion of the expansion. And you can imagine the tax basis for our county and that because.
Also, I mean, I know that they're currently working on a class action lawsuit against the, those that put it in. I know the commissioners there have got a lot of backlash, but you're right, it is a good opportunity. I guess, to me, that highlights the need to specifically target areas for that type of growth, because that's one instance where it is surrounded by residential, and we have so much land to choose from in Franklin County. Why would we put it up, right up against the city if we don't have to? Which is why we have, designated areas for industrial growth. Mayor Umberhan, I agree with you. Cities are already ready for that, but I feel like we're closer than 10 years out. I feel like if we can get gas lines up to the 85 corridor,
now's the time for infrastructure.
We're very close. We already have internet expansion coming through True Vista. We have water, we have sewer. We just need to expand those a little bit, but I don't necessarily think that we're that far out. I just think...
Now, so the county has the money to put in all these infrastructure plans you're talking about?
No, I said we need to work with you guys to help find a way to fund that.
I'm I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Well, what I was
No.
going to say is, this is where I think is a prime opportunity to partner and come up with some solutions to expand possibly gas and develop those specific areas because,
Well, listen, a natural area, and I forget I've been involved around here for almost 25 years. So, although I shouldn't forget. And this is a conversation that's been had over and over and over. And there's a natural corridor right up the interstate between Livonia and Carnesville. You have a frontage road already there. It's called Highway 59. You got a 12-inch water line on Highway 59. You may not have all the gas you want. Should have high-speed internet pretty much up and down that area. I've always said for years, half a mile on either side of 85 ought to be pretty open to most any, whether that's, and I live within that corridor. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
So as we're kind of thinking about that, I'm going to just kind of shift this a little bit. So as we're kind of thinking about those industries and what we believe, whether it be area or whatever the case is, maybe we need to dig a little bit more into what is the BOC's fears and or concerns about that idea of heavy industrial. Maybe that's a point to kind of more talk through. What are your fears and or concerns about if the recruitment of heavy industrial, we'll just say broadly heavy industrial, and that came on the table, what would be the primary concerns?
The big concern is impact, which is why planning now, if we did have something like that, where are we going to put it? I think there needs to be some thought toward developing more industrial parks that are well screened, that are convenient to 85. The biggest issue or one of the big issues with GRP was it was set out, basically in a farming community in the middle of a pasture. And that road the trucks travel through a heavily residential area, and that has magnified the impact of that. There are benefits to GRP, but there's been a lot of negative stuff. Maybe if it had been planned better, put in a different location, maybe that impact would have been less. And so now's the time to plan for that.
You brought up a good point, is the county, and this is something y'all could talk about later, as far as creating industrial parks. If we partnered and created industrial parks, 400 or 500 acre industrial parks, with the county, where we go in and partner and buy it together.
I think so. I think we need to consider that. If that benefits everybody.
Because then we have done our due diligence and laid out the right pieces of property and got the infrastructure there. And it's a joint effort between the Board of Commissioners and the IBA.
If we had those and they were heavily screened, they were closer to the 85 corridor, so you're not traveling through rural areas, and that would lessen the impact on those residential areas.
I think this board would agree with me that the two main areas we need to look at are 85 corridor and anything on the rail in Franklin County. Does anybody disagree with me on that?
I think the biggest area is the 85 corridor. We've
had several calls lately for decent properties on rail, just because of connection from Savannah and
that would be another good place for a big industrial park.
Kind of businesses, but it's it would be heavy, but it would be right in line with things that are going on 10 miles down the road.
One other thing you got to look at too. When you drove, Jason, you drove here on 59, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's all rural.
It is, because we haven't had zoning. Anywhere we go is going to be that
way. What I'm saying is, anywhere you go right now, that's rural.
But there are better places than some are better than others. That's why I do an industrial park would be the right move to make.
Let's buy an industrial park. Let's buy some land, build an industrial park. There's going to be somebody who doesn't want that.
That's true, but I'm talking about minimizing impact.
And you can have in that verbiage where you would do your due diligence, do the proper green space, screening, whatever.
Screening would be important, but again, and access to the main roads.
I'm sure the cities do too. So, things can be done.
That's what I'd like to see, and that would be ideal for, like you're talking about, the rail line. But anything to minimize impact, because we're always going to be faced with the people who live around it who are not going to be happy. But if you have a several hundred acre park that has a heavy tree buffer and has good quick access to 85 or to the rail, whatever, then you minimize some of those impacts. That they're not driving past, 100 people's houses to get to a plant that's buried in the woods. I just think that would serve us better.
And as far as the impact, we've kind of labeled the impact as being one. Is there anything else that from the Board of Commissioners that we feel is another factor that we see as far as an obstacle to heavy industrial for anybody?
Well, I mean, just going back to what Mayor Moore said, when you said is it a possibility that the IBA and the Board of Commissioners partner together, I don't think it's a possibility. I think it's a necessity.
That's why we wanted to meet,
I think we have to be partners. And I mean, I've been on this board 7 years, and it only took me about 6 months into my first term to realize you had the Board of Commissioners here, you had the school board here, you had IBA here, you had all your cities here, and nobody wanted to work together. I mean, there was very little communication and everything, and I think we have come a long way since then. But I think it's a necessity that we're partnered together. I mean, I don't think it's a possibility. I think it's a necessity that we're partnered together to move the county forward, especially with industry. Because, I mean, without industry, we're going to suffer. And we all need to be together on it. I mean, I don't think it's a possibility, and I think it's necessary that we're partners.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask you this, just to kind of speed up this particular part. If our board got together and looked at just specific areas on 85 and rail that we could partner with, we give them the time now. Your board does the same thing, we give them there. Let them cross over with y'all with what we have and try to put together a much better plan for countywide industrial parks.
Why don't a couple of us work with a few of you to do that, so that we're both working together on that instead of having two different plans that you then have to reconcile.
And that's fine too.
We want to meet more with you. I came on the board in 2017. This is the first time we've ever sat down with IBA, and that whole time, this has been 6+ years. I think we ought to be doing this twice a year, so that we all stay on the same page and we're all working together.
To Derek's point, he did say what specific factors. I think you look at any type of industry is going to bring something, right? But you deal with typically air quality, water quality, noise, and traffic, right? And so whatever the level of that is, if we're talking about issues with super noisy industry or something that's putting off a lot of smell or something where there's high traffic, you want to guide those toward those industrial complexes or closer to 85 to mitigate the exposure to the people. That's kind of how I view it. Is you look at those 4 things and try to figure out, all right, does this fit in the middle of the county or does this fit in one of those heavy industry locations?
The question I would have is, have we not done that?
I don't know to what degree.
And going back to working together, when we got involved with that, the Pilgrim's plant, first thing we did was reach out to you guys.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. That's the first time really that had happened.
And we did sit down many times during that process.
We did. We worked together on that.
So, I think we want to do that. We don't want to do anything that's going to hurt this county because we all live here. We all work here. And so we don't want to do anything to hurt this county. And we want the best plan. We want people to live here, love to be here, play here. We want this to be the best place that it can be. And if we're not working together, it's not going to be. But I think we're trying to do those things, right. And so we would love to work with you guys on that. Going back to your comment there, any industry you bring in here is going to have some of those issues.
Right.
Traffic. You look at carry on.
Same as housing, John. Same as housing.
Carry on trailer. I don't know how many trucks come in and out of carry on trailer go right through downtown Livonia.
Mm-hmm. That's a good example. If you look at where they're at, that little industrial area, it's away from the residential areas and it's right off of 17. So you got a major corridor. The trucks do come through there, but it's a major corridor. They're not driving through residential neighborhoods to get to it. They go straight down 17, take a right, and boom, you're in that huge industrial area that's well isolated. So that's a good example of how that worked out. I don't know over the years if that just sort of sprang up or the exact planning that went into it, but that's a perfect example of how in the city you've got a highly industrialized area but it minimizes impact with everything else. Because it's not like a heavy a large housing area in there. That's all industry all back through there. And that's taken years to develop, but still,
Yeah,
that's
but
a
you've got
good
surrounding
example.
all those. You've got the thing in Franklin County. This is the thing. We've got big tracts of land that have farms, just like down 59 or 51. It's a lot. We don't have any subdivisions. It's people that own 5, 10, 1,500 acre tracts of land, and it's agriculture. So you have that same thing around those plants. That industry right there. You still have that. There's still impact.
There is. We're just looking
no
to
matter
minimize
what you
it.
do, you're gonna have some impact. It's just you got to plan it, and like I said,
If
we put something down 59, there's gonna be people that don't like that.
There is, but a large part that has a heavy tree buffer, and maybe even a stretch of land on the outside of the tree buffer that's there and that's dedicated to keep in a kind of a virgin state. All those things can minimize impact to the surrounding people. That's what our focus ought to be. Something's going to upset everybody, no matter where you put it. But if we can minimize that, if we can take proactive steps to minimize that impact, I mean, we're doing all of us and the county a favor.
I'm very much in agreement with what you're talking about the industrial parks. And quite honestly, if you're going to look at industrial parks now, outside of one or two small areas, they're going to be in city. Like I said, that's where the infrastructure is. Here's the reality, and that's why this meeting is so important. If you're going to have an industrial park and you're going to buy a few hundred acres, that's a whole lot of money. The reason that I said 10 years to get the infrastructure along the 85 corridor is there again. That's a whole lot of money. The reason the Pilgrim's Pride thing fell apart was because of the cost that it was going to take to get the infrastructure there. That's a heavy, big expense. That's a lot of money. And I would like to see IBA and the cities and the county be able to work together to figure out how to be part of the solution to that. And just kind of as a testament, obviously I've heard all the stories through the years about the infighting between the cities and the cities and the county and all of that stuff. But in the last 2 years, as we've been seeing a leadership change on the city level and on the county level, and I'll just speak for IBA, I don't think that you could have a better working relationship than all of the mayors of our cities have. I'm personally, I'm friends with all of you. We get along well. So, what more could you ask for with being able to have a spirit of cooperation? And I know that that's what it will take. But the reality, and that's why it requires the planning, is we're talking about a whole lot of money. IBA can help do a lot of the legwork on the planning of that. But that money's still got to come from somewhere. And a disproportionate amount of that money is going to have to come from the county. And in order for the county to spend that kind of money, and y'all know that better than I do, what other things, you're going to hear more people complain because their road didn't get serviced. You're going to hear more complaints about this or that. But it is worth the short-term frustrations of people for the long-term benefit. And I know none of these are things that we can do overnight. But depending on where we choose to locate those industrial parks, cities can carry more of the financial burden. Obviously Livonia can't afford to put an industrial park in Cannon. Cannon can't afford to finance an industrial park in Livonia. But if you're putting it in Livonia, obviously Livonia wants to be a partner with that. If you're going to put it in Franklin Springs or Cannon or Royston or Carnesville, they want to be a partner with that as well. But the expense is always the thing.
It's an investment, and I think, the other commissioners can chime in, but now's the time for the county to. We want to be a partner, but all that infrastructure, parks, that we're planning for, not tomorrow, but 5-10 years from now. We want, when that opportunity comes along, we want to be ready, and not, well, now we got to, spend millions of dollars in a short period of time to bring this particular utility to this area.
Well, the thing about right now, if we want industry right now, we have to depend on that industry to put in the infrastructure.
That's true. That's why we want to plan
to
change that over time.
But we can't wait 5 or 10 years, because if we wait 5 or 10 years, it's going to jump us.
No, it's just a process, but now's the time to begin.
In my opinion, we're 10 or 15 years late.
I agree.
in having this meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, we put ourselves, and I mean, I'm not saying this group necessarily, but in general, we have put ourselves behind the 8 ball because there's been no future planning as far as a 10, 15-year plan that, I mean, this should have already been underway. I mean, this should have been looked at, at least 10 years ago. And now we're here and we're meeting and trying to get this done, and all of a sudden you feel like you got to rush everything. I mean, that's just where we're at, unfortunately. But we need to work to it.
I say this when it comes to infrastructure, Warrenton provides natural gas, and we want to do it in a cost-effective way. And we want to help be partners with the IBA, but also with the county. But even the project I think before bid on Friday was probably $8 million investment for gas. Warrenton can't take on that burden itself and do it that rapidly and put the burden back on the taxpayers there. But again, like I said, proper planning would put us in a position because it could be a win-win for us. We understand that we're not going to have heavy industry in our city. But we do have natural gas. We do have some other resources that we're willing to provide, but we got to do it in a cost-effective manner. It's like I said, taxpayers in Warrenton can't shield that. So if there's proper planning there to look for ways to fund some of these projects, and I think Mayor Moore said it best, is if we were to have an industry, they're going to have to be the one to pay this because we are so far behind. So, but I'm here on behalf of Warrenton and said that, we want to work with the IBA, we want to work with the Board of Commissioners going forward to try to foster a great relationship. So we can play a part. Again, it's a win-win for everyone.
Well, gas is, that's a crucial utility. There's a huge benefit to the county, not only to Royston, to bring that to Carnesville and up to the northern areas of the county. So I think that's another area that the county should look into partnering with.
So I think just kind of tying the bow on that thought is that we all are in agreement that we all do want to partner. I think everybody can agree to that for sure. Yes, whether we're 10, 15 years too late, whatever we say that is, our opportunity now, those aren't mutually exclusive, is for the planning, but also the things that we have immediate need now, because there are going to still be businesses that are looking to come in that have the opportunity to build infrastructure. But at the same time, we can still be planning at the same time. Now, we can't all partner. I would say probably on the base level of that, maybe a preference just of mine personally would be as Tanya and I kind of work through some of the levels of that through the boards, just because obviously trying to get boards together is a little bit more difficult. Everybody here has day jobs. This is our job, so we're here. So it's a little bit easier for us to have quick and constant communication. Would be an idea if the boards are agreeable to that, because we can still get a lot of things on the base level done and relay information to one another's boards a little bit easier. But those are two things that aren't usually exclusive as we're going. And, businesses are still recruited coming in, but we still need to probably more aggressively look at the planning side of that at the same time, so that, as those businesses are coming in, eventually our planning phase overtakes that and becomes the more congruent plan, would be my suggestion. But I think with that, I think we are all in agreement to work together, and possibly it is something where we schedule something a couple times a year, and that be our board's meeting of the minds, just to kind of see where we are and sort of status check to that.
Well, we need to, like we talked about, we need to start looking at where could we develop a large industrial park that would be in an ideal location and be able to quick, wouldn't be a huge hassle. We don't want to be 100 miles away from the nearest utility.
Right.
So
That the first step would be to find one
locations
closest to the best utilities infrastructure we have.
And
Whether it
roads.
be closer to Livonia, closer to Carnesville, one of those two on that 85 corridor would be the best, location to look first. And then once we get something and get things in there, then we have more capital to do improvements infrastructure-wise and building out from that.
Yeah. But we need to start trying to nail that down.
I'm ready to
begin
start
to plan.
Why not add to the one we've already got?
I think that, that's not a bad idea.
We need, there's nothing wrong with expanding that, but we still need to look at other options too.
Right.
It's not going to all come to one location. We need to have multiple
But as
places.
of right now, though,
available.
Jason, it is because that's where
Oh, I
infrastructure
know.
is.
I know.
We got to key in on where we have current infrastructure. And if we can, even if we add 150 acres to the current Carnesville site, That's 150 acres that we already have the infrastructure there.
Is there a land available around that? That's the first question.
Yes, there's for sale signs on the land.
Yeah, they are. Price might be a little high.
But yes, that would be negotiable, I would say.
You know, one other thing we might need to look at, you know, Hart County just located that steel door plant down below my house, and that was in a spec building.
Correct.
I know it's gonna be some expense we have to incur, but we've had a lot of industry come into Livonia because we had
spec building first. That's
So I
right.
think we need to look at that also.
That's the benefit that's the benefit of a park. You can go ahead and start doing those kinds of things.
Would it also help do like Kerry said, like look for us, get a spec building built or grade more lots in the Carnesville Park before we go buy more property? Shouldn't we kind of?
You can usually get the people for that stuff.
You ready?
But I agree, curbside appeal, when people are in the shop, it makes a big difference.
And there's a lot of developers, as we get more and more attention, and I know y'all remember because you weren't around, but the Gerard Road site in Livonia, I mean, the stuff that's there was developed with Ruger.
Right.
That was what? I didn't hear you.
Develop a river.
Developed with Ruger. Those respect buildings.
Yeah, and that was a long process. I mean, it took over
That's
years
why-
to develop.
That's
but
why I kind of, again, like I said, I've been around here a long time. There has been a lot of planning. There has been a lot of cooperation. Nothing ever gets done in this area without some cooperation around here. And there's been individuals. What's in TI Automotive over in Livonia Mill? Is it still, what's it called?
Gateway?
No. English.
Caltex?
Caltex Textron.
Yeah.
The 10 guys that got together and put the money up to build that spec building. My dad was one of them. You know, it takes people being willing to do some of this, whether it's the government or whether it's individuals.
Correct.
But none of that stuff, the only thing that happened here purely by happenstance that I'm aware of is AutoZone. Nobody knew they were looking. One day they landed. And it's a great thing, and it's a big taxpayer.
Most people don't realize, I've done this many, many years ago when I was working full-time with Georgia Power. But the industry comes in and looks at your area. They try to find a way to exclude you, not include you. They try to, for company, believe it or not, BMW looked at Franklin County, but it didn't take them long to mark us off the list. We didn't have the infrastructure in place or the land. So whenever a business comes or an industry comes to look at your community, they try to find a reason to exclude you, not include you. If they keep finding a reason to exclude you, they start looking to really locate there. That's what people don't really understand. They try to find a reason to exclude you, not include you. So I think these spec buildings and these industrial parks that we're talking about is a necessary evil that we need to go through, and it's going to be money that we're going to spend before you ever recognize anything that comes from it.
right, it's going to take a while, but now's the time to start.
And I think too, Frank Norton Jr., he just recently did his report on the State of the Union, and that was, Franklin County is right in the middle of that. Right in the middle of that. So, whether we like it or not, we're right in the middle of where this growth is happening. And, with what's happening in Banks County and with what happened in Hart County with that announcement, we're right in the middle of it. So we've got to do something now or we're going to be in a mess.
And just in case, it was in public session and stuff, but I don't know how many acres we actually have left to sell in the industrial park. But we have one that's in the process of being closed. So we have some acreage that is being.
What's the size of that, of the Carnesville?
143.
143.
Right, and we are under contract and should close it out this week. It was
6 acres with an option of 2.
with the option to buy 2 more, and then I think Tanya has been contacted about some of the others. So what we have and I don't mean we, I mean the industrial authority, what we have in the industrial park is going, and it just took like 1 or 2 to start getting the gas and the utilities set in there. But that land's probably would be gone, and Tanya can kind of tailgate on this, because I'm just the attorney, I'm not the marketer. But one of the things I hear frequently is they're looking for a building, and they need a spec building, they need this size, they need this, and we don't have anything to show them.
Well, when you look at like what we could have sold 6 spec buildings last week. When you look at people that are looking for something available today, the last thing that companies are looking for right now is if they have to invest any time in putting in infrastructure. They're automatically going to add about $1 million to their bottom line. And so when they're looking at opposing counties and they see that they have the infrastructure in place versus grading or whatever else needs to be done, we're automatically dropped off the list if the infrastructure's not there, which is a huge plus for the industrial park. Right now, within the next 30 days, we're going to see one of our largest lots completely gone. We're going to have about 4 lots left to sell in the 10-acre park. So when we say that we need to find more property, we need to find more property yesterday. That's where we are on having to develop something new. And I think another key thing is when we're looking at where that is, if it's going to be right off of 85, right now, not to say what those projects are, if all 7 projects landed within the next 30 days that we're working, I do not want us to spend too much more time talking about heavy industrial. But they're heavy industrial, not necessarily because they have hazardous products, but because of either the capital investments or several other things that go along with that. Prime location is they're looking at either right off of 85 or that Tugolo industrial site, which is right on rail.
What is the total figure far as investment if you put all 7 of those heavy industrial projects together? What would be the total investment? Do you know off the top of your
Probably
head?
about $280 million.
Wow.
We would like to see all those land here. I cannot say what type of industry those are, but should those, let's just say they were spin-offs of maybe SK. Maybe they're suppliers to a battery company. You're looking at every single one of those carrying some type of hazardous material that would be considered heavy industrial. And so I think that it's important that we define what does the county see as heavy industrial versus what of our projects, because those could be 2 totally different definitions, and I think just categorizing that is going to be huge. But yeah, so we're about to run out of property that we do have. We have 2 sites on Girard Road that right now we've had site visits this week, and today's Wednesday. So, we know
so let's work on developing more.
Yeah, that's why it's key right now for us to go out and buy a new industrial park. We don't have the funds to do that. We carry in our account probably $300,000 to $500,000. Our operating expenses are less than $200,000. So, it's just we don't have the funds to go and purchase that property. So it's key that right now we're investing in phase 2. What is that next industrial park? Where is it at, and how's it labeled?
And we have
That's what we need
discussed
to plan
that.
for.
As soon as we move on these hopefully projects coming, we're going to take that money and invest in another industrial park.
Yeah.
Whether it's the size or whether it's 5 miles down the road one way or the other, and we're looking on the I-85 corridor. That's what we're looking at. So,
Yeah.
it's coming, and we as an authority are doing everything we can with what little bit of resources we have. Because you all know nothing's cheap anymore. We're having a hard time right now just in the city getting sewer pipe, 8-inch main, because it's so backward. I know everybody else is probably having the same problem too. So, it's just a crazy world we live in. But we as an authority we're excited about things that are happening in Franklin County. We just can't talk about them because they haven't happened yet. But we anticipate that.
And unfortunately, but fortunately, we're in competition, very friendly competition with our neighbors.
That's right.
Hart, Stevens. So.
Derek, you might have some experience with this, having been in Lawrenceville, but they're a community that grew overnight. I imagine most of the infrastructure is already there, which allowed them to do that. But at the state level, are there grants or incentives for communities like ours to expand, like gas? Is there?
Yeah, there are. And right now, I don't want to take that. I don't want to cut you off for sure, but I will tell you right now, there is funding. I hate to say, there's lots of funding that's out there. Unfortunately, funding does not follow gas. It follows wastewater. It follows several things, but broadband, but it doesn't attach itself to gas. So those are things that we're going to have to look at. We're going to have to invest in.
So there's no one going to bail us out on that.
Unless something changes, there's not really funding that's going to follow gas.
Not on gas, and I've lobbied a few of our congressmen and senators about that to try to see directly can they do anything. But that was a hard one, and I guess with the regulation too, it makes it a little bit tough. So the only way to be PSC if they were looking at doing something, but otherwise we've searched pretty extensively.
But you know, one thing that we have that can, you know, help when we do attract that industry, you know, let's say they have to make an $8 million investment to get gas to 85. Well, we could look at, by talking with you, the possibility of abating taxes for X number of years so they can recoup what they're putting into it, but yet we're getting a tremendous benefit from getting infrastructure to 85 that will help us grow substantially in the next however many years. So, I mean, there's ways to help us get infrastructure.
We're willing to help and even help fund things because it's an investment in the long run. That if we lay the groundwork for more industries to come in, then the payoff is later when they're here.
But I think also too, though, if you look at it, I mean, if there's so much money, that's available grant wise for whether it's water, sewage, or whatever, and we can pull that money from the state, that frees up money for the county to spend on the gas.
And I'll tell you this, Commissioner Wester, they look at partnerships, whether it's multiple cities, county, IBA, they would rather see multiple groups working together. They're more favorable getting those grants when there's a bigger group working together than just say the Board of Commissioners doing it, or the IBA, or the City of Livonia, or the City of Royston by themselves.
But I mean, what you're talking about partnering together with it, if we're getting that funding and we've already sort of identified a location we want to have the new industrial park at, that grant funding, we can start getting infrastructure run to it, right. Whether it be water, sewage, and all that, and then turn around the money we're saving by using that, we can put towards the gas to start getting gas to.
Right.
There are grant funds. I don't disagree. Everybody competes for them, and you almost have to have something in hand. You gotta have a reason for them to give you the money. Not just because we want to build this out here just for speculative purposes. So it takes a local investment. I mean, there's just no other way to say it. You cannot rely on grants to do this. Now y'all are in a pretty good financial position if I read your order correctly. So you have an opportunity, if you want, to make an investment and make this happen. I mean, I don't know how much you're thinking about.
We want to work with the IBA to make this stuff work. That's why we're here.
If I could throw this out again, I'm not part of it, but I'm here. I'm trying to mirror back in here because when things happen, it comes to my lap and your attorney's lap to put in writing and to figure out. But I'm hearing the overall picture and what it looks like in prior years. I can give you an example. Say we were developing industrial park for an area, so we would do an intergovernmental agreement for roads, and I think like maybe one entity bought the roads at first and got it up to a certain level, or the crush and run, and then another entity agreed to pay it, pave it, and then another entity agreed to maintain it. Now, roads don't create profits like some of the other utilities do, so that adds another layer to it. But if we're talking about, is a good idea to partner, the good idea is to think about, okay, how are we going to partner? Who's going to put this in to get it up to the crush and run stage? Who's going to get it up to the paving stage? And then who's going to maintain it? And I know those are simplistic, and utilities are a little more complicated, but that's kind of the way you've got to go. We'll be back here next year talking about the same thing. So it's kind of like an intergovernmental agreement. Who's going to put what into what, and who's going to do what, and who's going to own what, and then if there's any profits, are we going to pay anybody
But the
back?
thing about this, Andrew, for the most part, everything that we do as an authority is in Franklin County.
Yeah.
All the taxpayer money goes to Franklin County. So it does make it, I understand what you're talking about as far as utilities and all, but at the end of the day, the money's going in one pot. So, we're all working on the same team, so to speak.
Derek, with our current SPLOST 5, there's money set aside for industrial development. So what balance do we have, and what amount of that can be used towards, say, building a new industrial park? There's a significant amount there, if I understand, that we haven't tapped.
Yeah, we have a lot.
I want to say 750,000. Is that right?
That sounds about right. I'd have to look to be for sure. I mean, the main thing for us with looking at what we could do SPLOST-wise is we probably have opportunity. It really just depends on what the actual plan is. We can get creative funding, whether it be abatements, whether it be some short-term loan. I mean, there's a lot of...
But we have the ability to begin planning for, if we wanted to go in and do a large industrial park. Now, we would want, and it might be in the county, we want all the, because it's going to benefit all the cities, it's going to benefit the whole county. So it needs to be a partnership with everybody, but the county can contribute.
Yeah, I think the main thing for us to look at is it is about kind of the infrastructure. I mean, because if you're buying the property, infrastructure to the property, that's a little bit more of a double cost in that if it is a little bit more, we're able to extend the park we have now. If that's a possibility, then you're just talking about simple purchase, maybe a few minor things that we're talking. I mean, I guess for our situation, it is going to take sort of the conglomerate of all of us to be able to do those things, because different from Lawrenceville, for instance, where they own their own gas utility, they own their own electric utility, and at that time own their own water utility as well. So it's really just all the cost of materials versus us. We're probably a little bit more labor intensive to support points of it. But I think the main thing is really just us kind of drawing up what the 5-year plan is. And once you see the 5-year plan, that's kind of where you're able to pocket where the funding is. Because it's hard to say broadly, a number that county is just going to commit. I mean, we can say $3 million.
Yeah, we need to plan that. We need to plan that, but
yeah,
we need to get started on it.
A number, because I mean, $3 million would mean a lot of things.
Right.
But if we have very detailed plans to it, then we can more outline exactly what the funding means. It can be a combination of a lot of different types of funding as well, but we just have to really lay out what that means. Just on the overall view.
I think there's going to be two parts to this. I think there's going to have to be an immediate. So what can we do to fill the immediate needs that we're going to have here shortly? So that may be a little different than our 5 or 10 year plan. And so I think we look at whether it's property or whatever, it says, okay, how can we get that done quick so that we have, the land or the resources to entice an industry. And then what do we look at down the road, as we move further down, that we can, look at, because we're like Tanya said, if those plans come together, we virtually have not a whole lot left to offer. If industry is coming in, and then that's where it can get a little bit hairy and get outside of our control. So.
And I agree with you. I think that should be an immediate priority, is that we start looking for land together that is feasible to use, whether it's that 150 acres that's already butted up to the Central Franklin Industrial Park, or whether it's somewhere else on the rail or wherever. But I think that is an immediate process we need to get going.
Mr. Chairman, when would you like to delegate maybe 2 of your members, meeting with 2 of our
let's do it now. Let's form a committee that can begin to meet to look at that. We don't want to meet in the fall and be right back to square one and nothing's been done. So let's make plans to move forward with it.
I'll volunteer to serve.
All right, I'll serve.
Commissioners who would like to serve? Okay, so Commissioner Wester, Commissioner Foster.
That's Ryan. Robert wants to. I'm fine with y'all.
So,
Commissioner Wester and Commissioner Foster.
I agree. I think both the city manager, the county manager, and our executive director need to be involved in that meeting. But we need to meet yesterday.
And which 2 of you?
Mayor.
Okay.
So how soon are we available for our first meeting?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, honestly, this is something that I've already had conversations with several of our members, and Tanya owns specific parcels in the county. And I've actually talked with Commissioner Wester recently about specific parcels. I think we as a board need to look at it. So I don't mind after this meeting if we want to go into Tanya's office for about 15 minutes and just show the commissioners kind of the areas. And I mean, it's on rail and it's on 85. But it's something that we were looking at, and we were going to go into much more discussion Monday afternoon in our meeting anyway. So we can go and look at that, and we can kind of talk about where we are financially, and then I think county manager can share where they are financially and kind of move forward. Right. Yeah. And, you know, we're doing that, you know, anytime we talk about real estate, as when we have a forum, we go into executive session. So that will be discussed, but we will be in executive session to discuss that on Monday. Trust it.
Well, just too, though, that we typically meet on the 14th, because of some items that have some urgency attached to the timeline, we're meeting on Monday, February the 7th, instead of the 14th. We have a short window to move on a couple things real estate-wise.
And these items are in our industrial park.
Yeah, and everything. So because of that timeline, we're going to have to meet on Monday, and we're going to be meeting at 4 p.m. here on Monday, and then we'll go back to our regular schedule of our meeting times. And we hate to do that when y'all are meeting, but again, we have a short time frame for a couple things that we've got to vote on in executive session.
Back to this question, I mentioned that split bezel a moment ago. If I remember correctly, Rooker built that one over there on Gerard Road in Livonia, spec building, and we had no money up front on it. And it sat there until a customer came in.
There've been several on that road.
So, that's right. So
I think of
what would be the probability of getting Rooker or some company like that to
I think it's
money?
very high, Gary.
Pardon?
I think it's very high.
I think that's what we need to
About
look at.
100%
Because
probability.
that's immediate. That's what we can get.
Yeah.
I had to wait on the industrial park. We can get that now.
I've talked to one gentleman who's got a partner that he said they've actually been considering.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a very, very great possibility very, very soon.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so just as we kind of get ready to close it out, when we look at like the expectations, I think a lot of these questions have already been answered as far as like respect to growth and stuff from the county standpoint, the Board of Commissioners. I think an important question, and it's already been answered, but I think it's important to hear this. How does the Board of Commissioners view its relationship with the IBA, and then maybe the IBA versus the Board of Commissioners? And let's iron that out.
we want to communicate, and so we're trying to make better use of our liaison who we want to report out. Now, sometimes we can't have them report out at every meeting because maybe they're meeting either before or after, because the schedules don't always line up.
Right.
But we want to meet with you guys twice a year because we haven't done that before, and I think it'd help all of us if we met more.
Well, and one thing, Mr. Chairman, that we've discussed doing moving forward this year, and I know your county manager set in, and I don't know, did anybody else from the county? You know, we want to set a quarterly meeting with, mayors, commissioners, school board members, the superintendent, all the decision makers in the county moving forward. So that's something that, we feel like as a board needs to be done. There's also individual mayors that need to be done, and I've shared that with both Tanya and your county manager. So that's something that you will get an invite soon. We've already talked with the superintendent about. So that's something that's going to happen quarterly. Isn't that what we discussed about quarterly this year? That way everybody's on the same page, because I'm a firm believer there's strength in numbers. When you fight a battle by yourself, you don't win. But when you fight it with everybody with you, you win. I think everybody, it would be a tremendous asset for everybody to be together on the same page. Whether that page is on the front of the book or the back of the book.
Commissioners, are there other things you'd like to see? Or?
No, to reiterate, I feel like we all are on the same page, which is exciting to me because it is for the benefit of the county. And I look at you guys, and when y'all spoke to it, it just feels like y'all are in sync. Y'all have a common goal for the growth, and y'all are true representatives of the county. You serve your respective cities, and we work the same way, so it benefits all of us to be on the same page. And I'm excited about where we're heading with this.
Could I just interject one thing? And I say this as respectfully as possible, because I think we are all on the same page. I think we've all got the same goal. And I don't want to bring up past issues, but I do want to say that last year we came very close to having some major rifts between the county and not only IBA but the cities because of the makeup of IBA. And a lot of that I think could have been avoided had there been better communication during that period of time. And I really would like to see I would like for everybody at these tables today to commit to making sure that we never allow ourselves to be in the position to have to become adversarial, or to allow the other to be villainized, because we are on the same team. And if the IBA allows the commissioners to be villainized, then the commissioners aren't going to be good partners with us. But by that same token, if the commissioners allow IBA to be villainized and just sit silently, it's very hard to expect goodwill coming from the other side. So I think that's a lesson that we should learn from last year. And I think the open communication, and that's why I appreciate commissioners setting this up for today. That open line of communication can help us avoid ever finding ourselves back in that position.
Amen. And just to piggyback on what Mayor Emmett said, all of us, whether one person, 10 people in the community agree or disagree, we all do want what's best for Franklin County. So that's the one thing that we need to remember is we all want what's best for Franklin County, because you know what? We all live here, our families are here, and we pay taxes here. If we don't have a heart to serve, we wouldn't be sitting at this table today and represent everybody. So I appreciate, Mayor, you saying that like you did.
Yeah, communication is important. The IBA, there's a lot of arguments even out in the public about, well, should we change the structure of the IBA? The IBA was set up in '62, and yeah, that's been a long time ago, but all the industry, or most of the industry in Franklin County, is here because of the IBA. And we know that you guys are good people, and we know that you want the best for Franklin County. And the IBA has to deliver. Now, does everybody agree with every project that is brought by the IBA? No, and that's just like somebody's always going to disagree with a particular industry depending on where it's located. But the IBA has served the county well, and we have what we have because of the IBA. And I'm excited about the growth opportunities, but we do need to communicate better.
And if I can throw it out, it's great to see this working relationship, but the whole reason behind the creation of the IBA way back when it was originally created was because it has avenues for financing and the ability to do things that the county isn't able to do by itself. It can purchase land and then lease it, and it create incentives for businesses to come in. There's a whole sundry of things that the industrial authority can do that the county cannot do by itself. So it's a good partnership to have to get together. And then even more importantly, one thing that this industrial authority can do is because it was created by constitutional amendment, we really have advantage over a lot of other counties because we have resources that was created in the constitutional amendments back when it was created that other counties don't have. So we do have some things to offer that other places do not have to offer. So it is really an integral part of helping Franklin County grow for its industry and business.
So we need to have an idea of when are we going to meet again, like maybe in the fall, with the idea that this committee is going to have something to present to us by then. Yeah, or even before. Yeah. Well, that'll be here before we know it. It's already February.
Right.
So we'll go ahead and get some dates together, and we'll get those out before the end of, in the next day or so. Does that work? Or unless you wanted to plan something today, we can make sure that we have.
Yeah, let's have some dates so everybody can take time to look at them.
Okay.
But let's have some dates.
Yeah, we'll have some dates to send out, and then we'll have an answer back. I would say from my side, no pressure, but probably the next day. No pressure.
Right.
Is that okay? Okay. Two, since Scott Delosier is here, planning and zoning, I think it's important that we hear from you for just a second.
All right.
Get on the hot seat if you don't
yeah,
mind.
no problem.
Let's talk about this now.
Everybody knows it's all
Trust me, so with this discussion, obviously a big portion of that's going to be zoned to any issue that comes in. Everybody sitting here understands the fact that the purpose of zoning is to kind of dictate, control, and specify different areas of the county for different uses. So this is the old zoning map, which you can see is pretty much all ag. This one is the one that is still in progress, still being worked. It's not finished. I kind of debated, the cities have all seen this, I kind of debated even sending it out because there is still a lot of updates that need to be made to it. The firm that's helping us with this, without going into too much detail, the last 4 months, she spent 2 months in the hospital, so it's kind of pushed this back. There's been a lot of tracks that have been identified that are going to change a little bit, but the concept is the same. You can see that there's some, all the white is going to be residential stuff. That should have been residential from the beginning. And that's going to help us identify, okay, without having to go through and, pick apart, driving to the county, you can look and say, okay, we can identify where the residential pockets are in the county one. There's a lot of changes from an ag intensive zoning to an ag general zoning in the more rural areas. We've got a lot of 1 and 2 and 3 acre tracts right now that are zoned ag intensive. Nobody's doing ag intensive operations on 1 acre tract land. So, you switch that to more of an ag general or a rural type zoning, it makes more sense. Your ag intensive tracts are now going to be pretty much, if they have a poultry farm on it, if it's over 25 acres that we know is being used for row cropping, heavy cattle operations, that sort of stuff. But the rest of it's going to be flipped more of a general type zoning, which, again, we can look at that and identify, okay, so we've got these ag intensive areas and we've got these residential areas in these pockets. So is this going to be a good fit for this industry? One thing that we are looking to do is kind of get some more commercial along the I-85 corridor. You can see at the interchanges, there's some shift to that red coloring, which is a commercial zoning. The specifics are still kind of being ironed out, but the overall concept is the same. This is not going to change. I am looking at, I'm glad you're talking about the I-17 or the 17 corridor with the rail. There's some pockets on that that are going to be very, very valuable to the county, very valuable to the industry coming in, because that's kind of how I should have brought it. But one thing that we define with heavy industrial is, it might have objectionable stuff as far as noise, sound, that sort of stuff. But key thing that they need is going to be water, sewer, rail, and easy access to roads. We do have that defined already. So you might see a few changes, when the final one is presented, which again, the Board of Commissioners, y'all ultimately have to vote this in. But you'll see some changes in that regard. I set out to the cities that I want to make sure that, hey, with this concept, this idea that we're looking at, I want to make sure it's not going to conflict with what y'all have going on. And if, I'm one person, I'm not going to say that I'm going to make this be 100% perfect. I value and I need input on it. Another thing that is important to mention is that some of the most recent annexations are not on this map right here. There's some, I know a big tract, the city of Carnesville, is showing still county, but it's been annexed. All the recent ones for the city of Livonia, I know Franklin Springs, y'all just purchased some land supposed to be annexed. So those you're not going to see here, but they will be updated as those kind of become more tracked and put on this map. So that's kind of what we got going on that perspective. We would like to have it, to where it's easily identifiable on the zoning map where we have ideas for industry. But that's kind of what I have on that. If anybody has any questions or comments, I'm here. I'm going anywhere for a little while.
I just want to thank you, Scott, and your office for taking on this, because this is a tremendous endeavor. And it's a never-ending endeavor, so I appreciate y'all taking the bull by the horn, so to speak, and doing your best to make this.
Appreciate it.
As a suggestion, it would also, I think, be helpful for the commissioners to have not only what the zoning map is once it's official, but to do an actual comprehensive plan map. Because that obviously plays into a factor as to whether or not you allow for zoning. And the comprehensive plan is your biggest weapon in order to turn down zoning and still be in good legal standing in doing so. So I think that would be, it's always easier to look at a map than it is to take 123 pages and look through it and find a justification.
Right. And that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. We do have a current comp plan. It was done, I think, in 2018. It was done before I was here. It needs some addressing. What I would like to see is the county adopt not only a zoning map, but a future land use map as well to go along with it. So you have zoning, you have the comp plan, and future land use map. But that's gonna.
We have a character map too. Are we updating the character map to go along with this?
Character area map is what is in the comp plan.
Okay.
It's kind of, currently it's kind of very general, kind of vague. It needs a little bit of help, in my opinion.
But if you want to call any of the cities and talk, because we all have all those in place, if you want any suggestions or whatever, feel free to call any of us or our managers, and we'll help you out all we can.
Absolutely, appreciate it.
When is the scheduled date to finalize that map to be voted on?
I think that's still open.
Yeah, so hopefully it'll be before the planning commission wants to look at it first, and then it'll go to the board of commissioners. I'm hoping we can get it all ironed out and have it in front of the planning commission for the March planning commission, which would then put it in front of the board of commissioners in April.
Are we trying to do that in conjunction with the revision of the whole zoning ordinance? How is that going to?
That's still being.
Because that's going to affect that. I mean, they affect each other.
It will. They'll affect each other. So there's some additional zoning districts that are in this that we don't currently have that will have to be defined when we do that. The UDC that we're writing it will hopefully be right there in the same 30, 60-day window.
Are we going to designate on this map specific areas that are HI, that we are targeting for HI? Because going back to doing an industrial park, now's the time to, when we're getting land to look at an industrial park, we need to make sure that it's zoning, taking into account zoning.
So currently on the map, kind of going off of what the guidance I was operating under was that all heavy industrial was going to come before the board, and we wanted to be approved before it was zoned that. So currently, there's not anything that's going to be pre-zoned or rezoned heavy industrial, unless we can all agree that, hey, this is where we want it, which the time to do that is
right. So one of the things that I think is, it appears that once we confirm this with commissioners, that we'll have a meeting date pretty soon, which will be before the final planning. I think if we can kind of identify those areas, that can be laid out on this map before it's voted on, so it's not conflicting what's been pre-designated, because I think this will probably include maybe some heavy. We'll have to maybe talk through that.
And if you're going to do an industrial park, it might as well be zone heavy industrial.
So before we do that, just to make sure that we don't overlap what you're doing, I want to make sure that we have this.
And we can, in any zoning map is a fluid document. Right. So even if even if y'all designate it after the fact, we could just apply for a rezoning and rezone those specific tracts.
And as we move forward, when we do purchase land, we can automatically go through the process of rezoning it with the intent for the industrial park. So that's not an issue either.
Right.
Any Scott questions at this time?
And Scott is our new assistant county manager as of the first of the year, so we're glad to have him in that role too. But he's going to continue with zoning for right now.
Yes, we do appreciate Scott and some heavy lifting to do these couple of projects.
So are you still, this is just a general question, so do you still approve plats?
I do, yes.
Okay. I do a lot of real estate people.
Okay.
Here.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. So I think just for kind of what we got, we seem to have a pretty good, I think, base plan for what we need to do. With understanding a higher level of communication, understanding, the overall zoning and what we need to do towards that, how we want to go towards that, a plan towards working long range, but also at the same time, short range plan that we have with IBA continuing to conduct business. But I think the main thing to take away out of this is just really the communication that we have. I think it's easy enough for us, picking up the phone. I think it's easy enough for us to set up meetings, whatever the case is. But I think it's just a matter of us actually doing that and communicating. Tanya and I, we talk a lot. So, there's not a lack of communication or understanding of what's happening throughout the organization. But, within boards, then we have to do the same thing. And we have to be just willing partners in doing that. Also, too, just understanding, too, just one other thing we have to understand about the industry and what we're looking at. on the overall, as we go down the road, is looking at the increase in higher paying jobs that we can get for the county, looking at the reduction of poverty in the area, looking at the opportunity for infrastructure growth. So those are all things that can come with business as it is coming to the community. And those are big things that we have to really look at. Now, we're not going to change the overall average wage in the county. That's, to be honest, about a 15, 20-year kind of process whenever you're going through that. To be honest, it takes a long time to really do it, unless everybody that moves here is a millionaire. So with that not being a likelihood, we just have to really keep thinking about how we're going to improve on some of those metrics. Those are things that are important for us. From the county side, that's important to us as a metric because that can affect our credit rating. You can't get a higher credit rating if your base is low, so they're counting on them to be able to pay the fall. So these are important things, and even though they are down the road, things that we do put in motion right now are things that affect the 10, 15-year mark. So you do have to have your eye on today, but keep it in mind, having your eye way down the road. Even if 15 years is your retirement. We have to be kind of thinking about that. I wasn't looking at you, Harris.
Good.
I saw you smiling.
So just one final point, and we were going to mention that, I was going to mention this at our IBA meeting, but I think it's important that commissioners know this and understand this piece of it too. January 1 is when DCA changes the tiers of what communities are designated as. And that says it's super important. It's a lot of information that people don't really dig into. It's just because it's so much information. But as of January, Franklin County moved to a tier 1 community. So there's 1, 2, and 3 tiers. And what that means for us, and that's based on, they look at communities based on per capita income, unemployment rate, and then poverty. We went to a tier 1, our surrounding communities went to a tier 3. And we're still trying to figure out, I've reached out to DCA and I'm like, what is the big change from Franklin County going to tier 1? What that means for us, depending on how you look at it, it's very attractive for industry. So you're going to see an influx of industry start to come in. The phone calls are going to start to come in. You're going to see more industry targeted toward Franklin County right now than we probably have in a long time. I don't know what time, and I've even talked to Lynn Allen, who was here way before my time, about, it was a challenge to become a tier 1 community because it's so attractive. So what that means is per employee, for every new industry that we get, our industries now get like a $4,000 tax incentive per employee that comes here. And industries, I don't want to say they follow that, but they tend to follow that. So because of that designation and that change and that map that's just now hitting out there, industries are looking more heavily at our community. So we're going to see a lot more business. And we're going to be a lot more attractive for industry than we typically get been because of that state level incentive that's pushed out there. So, when we do start seeing more traffic driven this way, that's one of the reasons our designation. We lost a lot of designations because of becoming tier 1, but in the long run, we've gained more. We went from like a $3,000, $3,200 per employee incentive to a $4,000. It's very important to a bottom line to an industry that's looking.
Anything else from either of our boards, any other business that we have?
Commissioners, do you have anything else? Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen of the IBA, you don't have anything else?
All right, well, we definitely appreciate everybody's time today and look forward to really growing our partnerships together and make sure that we do everything we need to do to move the county forward. And I'll kick it back to the chairman.
All right, we'll adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Wester has made a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Swell seconds. All in favor, signify by raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion will carry 4-0, and we stand adjourned. Thank you.
I'd like to ask a motion to adjourn. Got a motion from Mayor Little, second from Mayor Turner. First of all, last of all, and most important of all, I would like to welcome you, Mayor Herman, to the IBA. This is his first official meeting as mayor. With nothing else being said, all in favor to adjourn, shall I use your voting sign? Motion carried. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.